I would guess we are going to check more than 50%, so something like 54%. Okay, not that good guess, Igor. That's why we are not profiting this year. So what we are going to do is we are going to review some of the hands I've tagged throughout last night's session. And it's like a lot of different spots. So I also think this is mimicking what everybody is facing after a session, that we have a shit ton of hands and we just have to grind through them. The first hand seems pretty wild, but I was actually more interested in if we try to remove this free bet and we remove this cold call, because this is absolutely horrendous. But I was more like curious how our hand is going to perform. And I know this seems like a silly spot, but if you have a lot of these basic spots, but you're actually not sure about it, well, that would perhaps mean that you are making mistakes in a lot of different basic spots. So I was actually saving this because I was a bit unsure where ace 10 would fit into. So those kind like simple pre-flop and also HSC beta is going to be a situation where we can actually, where it requires that we insert all the data, all the different factors, the stack sizes, the ranges. If I have to pick a good but quick way, I would actually open up our range viewer, because I think it's important that obviously we get the best answers, but we also are very efficient. So we are not using 1.5 hours for one spot, but we're actually choosing something where we can at least get a pretty good answer. So 20 big blinds, I know that this person is opening around 15 bigs, and the range is going to be a bit different. My position is button and he is EP. Like we see some clear patterns of jamming some of the eights to queens and having ace king off and ace queen off and ace king suited and something like that. And here we also have some of the block orientated ace x. But overall, we just have a pretty strong range and pretty well protected. But we also faced by a less polarized range. Our opponent don't really have that much incentive to jam. But as for a 15 big stack, as we can see here, this is actually the solution for the symbol solutions, like all those with the symbol tags, where we can see it's a pretty well polarized range, because a lot of hands now have incentivized to jam. So let's see how we should actually perform against that. And obviously we are faced by the two results of 100% call and 100% jam. We see the jamming range here. So we see that against the polarized range, we need more strong hands in our range, and protecting our flatting range is going to be lower priority. If we have to say what is the best option, I'm not really sure. I think it depends on our opponent's strategy, but I think we can at least take away the thought process of the more polarized we think our opponent is, the more strong hands is required. Awesome. So I actually saved this just because I in-game in the video actually said something like I was a bit unsure about the post flop, if this would be a high frequency bet, if it was going to be big size, medium frequency, or it was just like any two. I don't have 40 big blinds, but I have actually prepared this up here. I know it's 60, but at least it's showing the principle of what Michelle was also referring to. I think we only have like the tightest opening range is low jack, but it's okay. So when we have this kind of spot here, or if I'm going to review, I'm obviously going to try and find something like the spot down here. So we find the 10x down here, and we can see it's overall, I know it's only 3 boards, but it's better than nothing. So we can see here there's a not overwhelming, but we can pretty much just say it's a very high frequency bet. And the difference between this to this, or like the 10.8.7 to the 10.6.5, is we can obviously see that there's going to be an increase in the checking frequency. And the more mid-connected it's going to be, the more checking we're going to do so. But here, where it's a bit more disconnected, we see that there is like basically 100% c-bet. Maybe we could see if it's the same pattern for the Jack X. I don't expect that the strategy is going to differ that much if it's Jack-X or 10x. And again, only one board, but still like somewhat mid-connected and drawy. We can see that we start to develop a checking range, but on the more disconnected or lower disconnected, we see that we bet 100%. And it's simply like these hands here are going to be in the range, but not really from the lower. So that's one way we could like, okay, we learned that on the more mid-connected where there could be possible offsuited straights or something like that, we start to develop a more checking range. And if it's more disconnected, we increase our c-bet frequency. But now we're going to go into the Odin report, or not the report, the solver Odin. I haven't looked this up either, but I would say something like 70%, and we're mixing between, I think we're actually going to have an overbet. I think overbet would be pretty lovely here. At least pot. To identify the patterns, or like the preferable betting size, we can clearly see that the percentages are somewhat around pot to 66%. So if I had to simplify this strategy, I would look at it like saying, okay, we're using an 80% size or something like that. And looks like there is a preference in betting. I mean, I guess it's just mixed, but I'm trying to observe if there is any preference in higher preference of checking with the ace of clubs, because that would normally be the case. Just to zoom out a bit, like high frequency and then mostly preferring a big size. And that's pretty much it, what I want to take, like the takeaway from here. But now we can like just dive a bit deeper and see what happens when it's more connected. Okay, so 11% in difference. So if we make it a 7, would it increase or decrease the checking? I want to test it. So like this. Okay, so increase. I would also say increase, but only 1%, right? I guess. Maybe the 10x as overall is maybe not the best, because we really have all the offsuited, or at least a very high frequency of the offsuited 10x. Yeah, top card is important. If this was 9, 7, 8, let's remove that and make it this. I would guess we are going to check more than 50%, so something like 54%. And I know like we are just like changing textures and so on, but it's also trying to build up a better understanding of why is it changing. And when does it change? Okay, not that good guess, Igor. That's why we're not profiting this year. We still, for this specific range, we still have some okay coverage. If we then changed it like the more lower area, shouldn't that be lead? Let's try one last thing. Okay, so we see some lead here. Okay, then I'm happy. And many players wouldn't even reach to like have 50% lead here. On average, when we're faced by players which are maybe just leading 15%, that would impact our EP c-bet frequency to be more passive. So I could actually see this spot being c-bet versus the population, maybe 80%, but yeah. And it's not because I'm going to go back to this and say, oh, what the fuck, this ace queen off, 40 big blinds, EP versus big blind is 80% high frequency. It's more like, at least what I've been reading, that when you type down stuff, you are somewhat memorizing better.